Hello, perceptive Scorpio. Have you ever noticed that the moments capable of changing your life almost never announce themselves? They don't arrive carrying certainty or demanding your attention. More often, they slip quietly into ordinary moments, waiting for the part of you willing to look beneath the surface. Perhaps you always believed that when something truly important appeared, you would simply know, that your instincts would speak so clearly there would be no room for doubt. But what if certainty isn't how those moments introduce themselves? Imagine someone was spent years relying on the same path through a forest, convinced they could never lose their way. One day, the landscape changes almost imperceptibly, and the familiar trail no longer leads where it once did. The signs are still there, but they require different eyes to recognize them. Sometimes what matters most doesn't call out to you. It simply waits to be noticed. For many Scorpios, the challenge isn't seeing deeply. You've spent much of your life learning to observe what others overlook. You notice subtle shifts in tone, hidden intentions, and emotions left unspoken. Yet there is another habit that often develops alongside that gift. After enough disappointments, it's easy to keep every new experience behind a carefully guarded door, testing motives before allowing anyone or anything to come closer. That quiet protection can become so familiar that it begins to feel like wisdom itself. You may believe you're seeing people exactly as they are, when in reality you're also seeing them through layers shaped by old memories, old fears, and old lessons that once kept you safe. Like a still lake reflecting the sky, the surface may appear calm, yet even the smallest ripple can distort what lies beneath. The deeper truth isn't hidden because it's absent. It's hidden because the water hasn't been completely still. There is another layer, even quieter than that. When you're carefully reading the intentions of everyone around you, how often do you pause long enough to notice what is happening within yourself? You may recognize the smallest change in another person's energy while overlooking the quiet signals rising from your own heart. The hidden current that deserves your attention isn't always outside you. Sometimes it's the one moving silently beneath your own thoughts. And what if that unnoticed current is where the real turning point begins? The encounters that reshape a life rarely arrive dressed as extraordinary events. They may appear as a simple conversation, an unexpected silence, a familiar face, or a door left slightly open that you almost walk past without thinking. Their ordinary appearance is exactly what allows them to go unnoticed by those waiting for unmistakable signs. So perhaps the real question isn't how you'll recognize the moment that changes everything. Perhaps it's whether you've been giving yourself enough space to recognize your own response before your defenses respond for you. What if the first feeling isn't certainty at all, but a quiet shift inside that asks you to stay present instead of retreating? This kind of awareness can't be developed through theory alone. It grows each time you become willing to observe yourself with the same honesty you've always directed toward the world around you. Instead of searching for dramatic confirmation, you begin noticing the subtle moments that ask for your attention. The old key isn't learning how to predict the future, it's learning which inner doors no longer need to remain locked. If something in these reflections feels unexpectedly familiar, don't dismiss that feeling too quickly. Recognition often arrives softly, and it rarely returns with exactly the same clarity once it's been ignored. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins not because the world suddenly changes, but because you become willing to see it and yourself with quieter, clearer eyes. And while you're reflecting on this, I want to ask you something. Is there a moment from your past that, looking back now, you realize carried more meaning than you understood at the time? A person, a conversation, or a quiet encounter that seemed ordinary on the surface, yet somehow left a mark you only recognize much later. Because sometimes the moments that reshape your life do not arrive with a dramatic entrance. They arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, like a small ripple moving across still water. The encounters that truly transform you rarely announce their importance. They do not always arrive with undeniable signs or a feeling that everything has suddenly changed. Sometimes they appear as a simple exchange, a familiar face, a passing opportunity, or a moment that seems too ordinary to remember. And perhaps that is exactly why they are so easy to overlook. When you are searching for something powerful enough to prove itself, you may miss the quiet things that were already asking to be seen. Think about someone standing beside a dark ocean at night, waiting for a wave large enough to confirm that the tide has changed. Their eyes remain fixed on the horizon, watching for something impossible to ignore, while a deeper current has already begun moving beneath the surface. There is no thunder announcing it, no sudden interruption, only a subtle shift that can be felt by someone willing to remain still long enough to notice. So if the right encounter arrives disguised as something ordinary, what allows you to recognize it? The answer may not be found in studying the world around you more carefully. It may begin with understanding the quiet movements happening inside you. For Scorpio, this awareness is especially important because your instinct to observe is powerful. You can sense hidden emotions, notice unspoken changes, and recognize patterns others may never see. But sometimes the same instinct that protects you can also convince you to remain behind the walls you built for safety. How many times have you met someone and felt a strange familiarity that you couldn't explain? Not because you knew their story, but because something about their presence touched a place within you that felt strangely known. And how many times have you dismissed that feeling because it seemed too subtle, too uncertain, too impossible to trust? That is where the quiet conflict begins. You may have learned to trust what can be proven while overlooking what can only be felt. There is a difference between observing someone and truly recognizing them. Observation looks for evidence. Recognition happens when something within you becomes aware before your mind has gathered all the answers. It asks you to pause before analyzing every detail, before searching for hidden motives, before deciding whether it is safe enough to open the door. And perhaps this is the deeper lesson. The encounter that changes your life does not need to be recognized by the outside world first. It needs to awaken something within you. The most important signal may not come from the person standing in front of you, but from the quiet shift inside yourself that says, "Pay attention, something here matters." But there is also a hidden cost to always staying guarded. Every time you silence a feeling because it seems too vulnerable, every time you retreat before allowing yourself to understand what is happening, a small part of your perception becomes harder to access. The cost is not that you lose your strength. The cost is that you may lose the ability to distinguish between a true warning and an old fear returning. It is like carrying a key for a door you stopped believing could open. The key remains in your hand, but over time you forget why you were carrying it in the first place. Slowly, the distance between protection and isolation becomes harder to recognize. Not because you chose to close yourself away forever, but because staying behind the same walls became familiar. So consider this. How many moments in your life did you call being careful when perhaps you were protecting yourself from a feeling you were not ready to face? How many times did you walk away from something meaningful because uncertainty felt more dangerous than regret? The most difficult part is that these choices rarely feel like choices when they happen. They often feel like instinct, wisdom, or simply knowing yourself. Only later, when you look back with more clarity, do you notice the quiet crossroads you once stood before. You begin to see that some doors were not closed because they were wrong for you. Some doors remained unopened because a part of you was still learning that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. Sometimes it is the place where your deepest strength begins to grow. If this reflection feels uncomfortable, it may be because it has touched something genuine within you. Not because the past needs to be changed, but because awareness gives you a different way of meeting the future. The patterns that remain unseen often repeat themselves quietly, but the moment you recognize them, you begin to meet life with a different kind of vision. There is a quiet power in recognizing your own patterns, even when that recognition feels uncomfortable at first. The moment you begin to notice the ways you protect yourself, the moments when you hesitate, and the times when you step back just before something meaningful has a chance to unfold, you create the possibility of responding differently. You begin to see that many of your reactions were not random choices, but carefully developed responses shaped by past experiences, old lessons, and moments when protecting yourself felt necessary. Awareness does not ask you to reject who you are or abandon the instincts that have guided you through difficult seasons. It simply invites you to understand the hidden movements within you, the subtle reactions, fears, and habits that have been influencing your choices for longer than you may have realized. For Scorpio, this reflection is not about removing your instincts or forcing yourself to trust without discernment. Your ability to sense what exists beneath the surface is one of the most powerful aspects of your nature. You often notice what is unspoken, what is changing beneath appearances, and what others may overlook completely. You can feel shifts in energy before they are expressed through words, and you may naturally search for the deeper meaning behind what you encounter. But the deeper question is whether your inner defenses are helping you recognize truth more clearly, or whether they are sometimes preventing you from discovering something unfamiliar but meaningful. The purpose is not to tear down every wall you have built, because some walls were created through wisdom, experience, and the need to protect what is precious within you. It is about understanding which doors were designed for protection and which ones have remained closed long after the original danger has passed. Now, I want to invite you into a moment of honest reflection. Think of a time in your life when something meaningful crossed your path, but you quietly stepped back before allowing yourself to fully experience it. Maybe you questioned whether the timing was right. Maybe you searched for more evidence before allowing yourself to move closer. Maybe you felt something important happening beneath the surface, but instead of stepping toward it, you chose to observe a little longer, hoping that more certainty would eventually arrive. Maybe the situation did not come with enough reassurance to satisfy the part of you that needed to understand everything before opening the door. Imagine looking through an old collection of photographs and suddenly noticing someone who had been present in the background all along. They were never standing in the center of the image, never demanding your attention, never making themselves impossible to ignore. They were simply there, appearing in small moments you once considered ordinary. Perhaps they were connected to a conversation you barely remembered, a chance meeting you dismissed, or a moment that seemed insignificant at the time. Sometimes the most significant connections, opportunities, and turning points remain hidden in plain sight, because your attention is naturally drawn toward what feels obvious, predictable, and safe enough to fully understand. And if you have overlooked something meaningful before, what makes you certain it could not be happening again in a different form? While listening to these words, consider how many times you have told yourself that you needed more time before moving closer to something important. A conversation you wanted to have but postponed until you felt more prepared. A connection you wanted to explore but continued analyzing from a distance. An opportunity that required you to step into uncertainty before knowing exactly where the path would lead. Sometimes the delay feels responsible because it gives you time to gather information, but sometimes it quietly becomes a way of avoiding the vulnerability that comes with allowing something real to affect you. For Scorpio, uncertainty can naturally feel like a place where caution becomes necessary. You seek depth, truth, and emotional honesty, and because of that, you may prefer to observe quietly until you understand what exists beneath the surface. There is wisdom in taking time to recognize what is real. There is strength in not giving your trust away carelessly. But sometimes the desire to know everything before taking a step can quietly become another form of waiting. Each moment you choose distance over discovery may appear thoughtful and responsible in the moment. Yet later you may realize that some of those choices were not guided only by wisdom. Some were guided by the fear of being exposed to something you could not completely predict, control, or protect yourself from. This is not about blaming yourself for the moments when you hesitated. It is about developing enough honesty to recognize the pattern when it appears. Because patterns rarely arrive announcing themselves clearly. They return quietly, wearing different faces, appearing in different circumstances, and repeating the same emotional rhythm until you become aware of what they are trying to show you. The way you protect yourself has its own unique shape. It has a certain feeling, a certain moment when you begin to withdraw, a certain thought that appears just before you close yourself off. Learning that shape gives you the ability to recognize when an old response is speaking louder than your present reality. Perhaps there is already a memory, a person, or a specific moment coming to mind as you hear this. If there is, do not rush to judge it or immediately decide what it means. Simply observe what it reveals about you. Notice the emotions that appear, the reasons you remember, and the parts of yourself that become easier to understand through that reflection. Sometimes the most valuable insight does not come from changing the past, but from noticing the emotional doorway that has appeared more than once throughout your life. The same hesitation, the same instinct to step away, the same quiet question of whether it is truly safe to move closer. Understanding these patterns is not about rewriting what has already happened. It is about meeting the future with greater awareness and a deeper relationship with yourself. True inner strength is not found in never feeling uncertain, never feeling vulnerable, or never needing protection. It is found in knowing when protection has served its purpose and when it has quietly become a barrier between you and something meaningful that is trying to enter your life. The goal is not to become someone who opens every door without thought. It is to become someone who knows which doors deserve to be opened. And now comes the deeper part of this journey. Truly recognizing the encounter, the opportunity, or the transformation that changes something within you may require releasing the very thing you have depended on most, the certainty that keeps you feeling safe. For Scorpio, clarity does not always arrive like a sudden revelation or a moment where every answer becomes obvious. Sometimes it comes like entering a dark cave with only a small flame in your hand, moving carefully through the unknown and trusting that the path will reveal itself one step at a time. The light may not show you the entire journey ahead, but it reveals enough for the next honest step. The darkness of that cave does not mean you are lost. It simply means you are entering a place where your usual methods of seeing may no longer be enough. Some truths cannot be discovered by analyzing every detail from a distance. Some truths only appear when you are willing to take one honest step forward and allow yourself to experience what is there. In those moments, understanding does not come from controlling the outcome. It comes from allowing yourself to witness what unfolds. What if the discomfort you have been trying to avoid is not proof that something is wrong? What if it is the place where something important is asking to be understood? You may have spent years believing that the right path would feel completely calm, completely certain, and completely free of fear. But some of the most meaningful moments in life arrive with a quiet tension, a subtle feeling that something within you is shifting before you fully understand what it will become. Growth does not always announce itself as confidence. Sometimes it begins as a question you can no longer ignore. That feeling does not always mean you should run. Sometimes it is the sign of an inner transformation beginning to unfold. Sometimes the part of you that feels uncertain is not the part that needs protection. It is the part that is learning how to grow beyond what once felt familiar. It is the part of you discovering that safety and openness do not have to exist as opposites, and that the deepest form of trust begins not with knowing everything, but with trusting yourself enough to meet what comes next. The most important moments in life rarely arrive in the way we imagine they will. They do not always come with a peaceful certainty or a perfectly clear feeling that says, this is the moment you have been waiting for. More often, they arrive quietly, almost hidden beneath the ordinary rhythm of daily life. Sometimes they appear as a feeling you cannot immediately explain, a hesitation that rises when you are standing close to something meaningful, or a sudden desire to step back just before you allow yourself to be fully present with what is unfolding. You may have learned to interpret that discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, a signal telling you to return to what feels familiar, controlled, and easier to understand. When you have spent years protecting your inner world, uncertainty can feel like something that needs to be analyzed before it can be trusted. But there is another possibility that requires a deeper kind of courage. What if the discomfort is not always protecting you from danger? What if sometimes it is revealing the exact places where something important is asking for your attention, your honesty, and your willingness to remain present? The things that truly transform you rarely enter your life without creating some kind of movement inside you. They disturb the stillness, even when no one else can see the change taking place. The shift may appear as a quiet thought that keeps returning, a feeling you cannot completely dismiss, or a question that continues to follow you even after everything around you seems unchanged. Sometimes transformation begins, not with a dramatic event, but with a small inner movement that refuses to disappear. This may be one of the hardest truths for Scorpio to accept. Your instinct to protect yourself is not a weakness. It has helped you survive difficult seasons, understand complex situations, and move through experiences that required emotional strength and resilience. Your ability to pause, observe, and sense what is beneath the surface is a powerful gift. But protection was never meant to become a permanent home where every new possibility must prove itself before being allowed inside. True strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the ability to remain open while still honoring your own boundaries, even when you cannot predict every outcome. The deepest transformations often begin in the places you would rather avoid. They begin in the hidden rooms within yourself. The emotions you carefully place aside because they feel too complicated to revisit. The memories you keep sealed because they still carry a quiet weight. These parts of yourself are not signs of weakness or unfinished healing. They are simply places where something within you is still waiting to be understood. Sometimes the very thing you avoid looking at holds the key to understanding what has been quietly forming beneath the surface all along. If you feel a quiet discomfort while hearing this, do not immediately push it away. Allow yourself to notice it before deciding what it means. Scorpio often has a powerful ability to sense what exists beneath appearances, but that same sensitivity can sometimes become focused entirely outward while the inner world remains unexplored. You may understand the emotions, intentions, and hidden meanings of others while forgetting to ask what your own feelings are trying to reveal. The recognition you are experiencing now may be the beginning of seeing yourself with the same depth and honesty you have always used to understand everything around you. You may never be able to predict the exact day when your life changes direction. No sign, no symbol, and no outside moment can completely reveal the meaning of an experience before you have lived through it. The importance of a moment is often understood only afterward, when you look back and realize that something small was quietly opening a new path. What you can develop is the ability to recognize the subtle shifts within yourself when something meaningful begins to approach, even before you have all the answers. You do not need to become someone who expects every storm or searches for every hidden message. You do not need to turn every moment into a mystery that must be solved. You only need to become more aware of your own inner landscape and learn the difference between intuition and fear, between wisdom and old protection. Like a still lake beneath the night sky, your reflection becomes clearer when the surface is no longer disturbed by suspicion, urgency, or the constant need to understand everything before allowing yourself to feel it. Because clarity is not found by uncovering every mystery outside of you. It is found by learning how to recognize what has been quietly present within you all along. The encounter that changes something deep inside you may have already crossed your path, disguised as an ordinary conversation, a familiar face, or a moment that seemed too simple to carry any greater meaning. Sometimes, what changes your life does not arrive as something unfamiliar. Sometimes, it arrives wearing the appearance of something you almost ignored. And perhaps another meaningful encounter is still waiting somewhere ahead, arriving in the same quiet way, not with thunder, not with a dramatic announcement that forces you to pay attention, but with a subtle feeling that asks you to pause, to listen, and to recognize what your deeper self has noticed before your mind has finished searching for proof. The most important moments are not always the ones that demand your attention. Sometimes they are the ones that quietly invite you to offer it. What changes from this moment forward is not necessarily the world around you. It is your willingness to meet life without automatically reaching for the old armor that once kept you safe. It is the choice to exchange the comfort of always being prepared for the deeper wisdom of learning, when it is safe to open, when it is safe to trust, and when something deserves the chance to be experienced rather than only examined from a distance. Scorpio has always understood depth. You have always known that what matters most is rarely found on the surface. Perhaps the next step is learning that true depth also requires clarity, because seeing beneath the surface means allowing yourself to be seen by your own reflection as well. The greatest discoveries are not always hidden in the world, waiting for you to uncover them. Sometimes they are waiting quietly within you, ready to be recognized when you finally choose to look with the same compassion and honesty you offer everything else.